let's go to Deuteronomy 28.
Yeah. All right.
Now, let's start at verse 49.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 49. And the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of old, nor show favor to the young. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle.
All right. That's one thing. You talking about there was animals walking around. The Most High said right here, he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle. When they come past us about, they took the cattle, you know?
And the fruit of thy land, until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or oil, or increase of thy kind, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee.
See, he will not, which shall not leave thee corn, wine, or oil, or increase of kind, mean different forms of animal and cattle, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. So he didn't leave us any. There was no animals walking around that they can grab to eat.
Yeah, you talking about there was. Why would you eat your own babies when there was animals walking around?
There's an animal walking around. That shows you have no understanding of the condition of a siege. All that reading you do and all the knowledge you got, you know very little about a siege.
Exactly. You know very little about being in that situation because you've never been in that situation.
Yeah, they're talking about all the stuff the blacks in America went through. They never ate their own babies. The blacks in America never went through something like that. Even though they were in slavery, the slave master was giving them the slop to eat. And the, what they call soul food now, the chitlins and the remain, the pig feet and all the stuff that they didn't want, they were giving them that to eat. But to be without food,
without nothing
for years, cut off from food and water and everything. When did that happen to the black man in America? When were their land sieged upon? They were encamped about by their enemies where they couldn't even get to food.
Do they even know what the definition of famine really means?
Absolutely not. Yeah, let's read on the next, bro. Let's read down to
So verse 52, Deuteronomy 28:52.
Yeah, we're gonna read all the way down to 57.
All right. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trustest throughout thy land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which the Lord thy God hath given thee. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thy own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which the Lord thy God hath given thee, in the siege and in the straitness, wherewith thy enemy shall distress thee.
Yeah, and the straitness means the difficulty, the difficult position that you would be in. All right, you know?
So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother, and toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall leave, so that he will not give to any of them of the flesh of his children, whom he shall eat, because he have nothing left him in the siege, and in the straitness, wherewith thy enemy shall distress thee in all thy gates.
So you check that out, because he has nothing left. Nothing left him in the siege, and in the straitness, meaning the difficulties, wherewith thy enemies shall distress thee in all thy gates. Right, read on.
The tender and the delicate woman among you, which would not venture to set the sole of her feet upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter, and toward her young one that cometh out from between her feet, and toward her children, which she shall bear. For she shall eat them for want of all things secretly in the siege and straitness, wherewith thy enemy shall distress thee in thy gates.
Okay, so now I'm going to read a couple of things out of this historical book, which they use in this society for a lot of things to prove historical facts that took place to show that this thing that was told to Moses, which he written down and Christ told us was going to happen, actually did happen. Actually did happen. And by the way, we're going to speak on this a little more, but it's not the first time in history that people ate their children during famine and during siege.
Yeah,
And the Israelites are not the first people that did that, or the last.
Exactly, they're not the only. And when you even look at, you can check history out. History proves that there was famine all through history, and people did the same thing, brother. And what makes it so ironic and so crazy is that the Egyptians themselves did the same thing. You see, somewhere around it was 1201. Somewhere around that time, they had a great famine, and the Nile River didn't have this normal flood that it has every year, so it could produce that black silk that helped crops. You know what I'm saying? So they had a famine. So what happened? They was faced with the same thing that they're saying that Israel was faced with when we ate our own babies. But see, we understand we were put in that position because of disobedience, you know, that we had towards the Most High God. We didn't keep His commandments. So we were put in that situation. It wasn't that God told us to eat our babies and that it was okay to do so. It's that we disobeyed His laws, statutes, and commandments. So we were put in that situation where they took all things from us. And then we had to sit down and survive and eat our babies, I guess.
Right. I'm going to read a couple things concerning the situation of this siege. The siege started with General Vespasian, but then there was seditions going on in Rome where the Emperor Nero had died at the time. And he had to go back and fight against these other individuals in the empire that was trying to take over the empire. So when he got everything back in order, he sent his son Titus to finish destroying, to finish the job he started. This is the book of Josephus, page 720, chapter 11, chapter 11, part 1 of chapter 11. I'm going to start right from the beginning. I'm going to read a few things here. It says, "So now Titus' banks were advanced a great way, notwithstanding his soldiers had been very much distressed from the war. He then sent a party of horsemen and ordered they should lay ambush for those that went out into the valleys to gather food. Some of these were indeed fighting men who were not content with what they got by rapine, but the greater part of them were poor people who were deferred from deserting by concern they were under for their own relations. For they could not hope to escape away together with their wives and children without the knowledge of the seditious, nor could they think of leaving relations to be slain by the robbers on their account." Let me give a quick brief, because I read this a while ago, but I still remember a lot of it. I read it probably about over 10 years ago. What it's talking about is that since the siege was so hard, people were trying to sneak out to get food. Titus had soldiers waiting to gather them when they went out to get food. And it says some of the men that went out to get food were fighting men, but a lot of them were poor people that was, going to get food. And they were scared to leave because what was happening. When the siege first started, Israel was fighting against the Roman Empire to try to liberate their nation. But some battles they won, and a lot of them they lost, until a lot of the soldiers was dying off. So when the soldiers began to die off, what was going on in the city, you had thugs and hoodlums that was basically didn't have food. They were going into other people's houses and taking what they had. They were basically bogarting and taking stuff from the poor and the weak, the tender and delicate man, the tender and delicate woman among them. They were robbing them, taking stuff from them, and leaving them with nothing. So when people were trying to get out to get food, they were waiting ambushes for them. They were waiting for them to come out of the city to try to get food. And if any of them deserted and left, and they found out that they left, the people like the zealots and the warriors that was in the city, if they found out that they left, they would kill their families over that. Because they said they were deserting. That's how wicked those men were at that time. So let me read on. It says, "Nay, the severity of the famine made them bold in thus going out. So nothing remained but that, when they were concealed from the robbers, they should be taken by the enemy. And when they were going to be taken, they were forced to defend themselves for fear of being punished. As after they had fought, they thought it too late to make any supplications for mercy. So they were first whipped and then tormented with all sorts of torture before they died, and were then crucified before the wall of the city. Thus miserable procedure made Titus greatly to pity them, while they caught every day 500 Jews, nay, some days they caught more. So it's saying that every day they caught at least 500 Israelites trying to escape, and crucified them, tortured them and crucified them in the walls of the city.
Wow.
You know, so the soldiers, out of wrath and hatred, they bored the Jews, nailed those they caught, one after one way and another after another, to the crosses, by way of jest, when their multitude was so great that room was wanting for the crosses, and crosses wanting for the body. So there was so many people, they didn't have enough room to put them up on crosses, and they didn't have enough crosses to crucify the great multitude of people they were catching that were trying to come out of the city or go out and try to get food. So for them to get food, they had to put their life on the line to try to go out and get some food.
Wow.
So I'm going to read one more part and then we're going to leave this alone. This is page 723, chapter 12, part 3 of chapter 12. It says, so all hope of escaping was now cut off from the Jews, together with their liberty of going out of the city. Then did the famine widen its progress and devoured the people by whole houses and families. The upper rooms were full of women and children that were dying by famine, and the lines of the city were full of the dead bodies of the aged. The children also and the young men wandered about the marketplace like shadows, all swollen with the famine, and fell down dead wheresoever their misery seized them. So when you talk about people walking around swollen from famine, it means that, you know, like they should show you pictures of in Somalia when
the babies,
the babies, how their stomachs were swollen.
Yeah,
that's what they were going through. And walking around like shadows mean the mind state they were in. They were like I can't even explain the mind state. Y'all do all this research on words. Research what happens to a person when they start to die of starvation.
Yeah.
Are their mind state the same?
Yeah, they delusional. Their minds they can't think right.
Yeah, they show you that with the European Jews when Hitler was starving them, how they were walking around like zombies. That's basically what it's saying, that the young men were walking around the marketplaces like zombies, man. Hold on a second.
Yeah. There you go. I'm gonna see that real quick. Thanks.
So you can get an idea. There was no food around. There was no animal walking around for them to snatch up. And it wasn't every single person was eating their babies, but there was people that was in distress, and some of them, the babies died first and they ate them. And some of them, the baby was about to die anyway. So I couldn't imagine eating a baby.
Yeah.
You know, if you tell me that now, can you eat your baby? I'll be like, hell no.
Yeah,
but then again, I never faced that situation, so I can't be a judge of that situation. And neither can you be a judge of that situation because you've never been in that situation. So it's foolish for you to say the things you say.
Yeah, but like I said earlier, they did it themselves. So who are they to say that we eat our babies when they did the same thing?
Yeah.
And like I was telling you before we even started the show, that it's funny because they was digging up dead bodies and eating dead bodies. You know, they would take their babies and boil them and eat them. They were doing this in 1201. So they could do their research and see that themselves, since they do so much research. But not that, you know, we did enough on it. Hopefully they could, you know, do some research and see what we saying is true.
Yeah. Before we start getting into the God.